Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Very excited for tonight's show, guys and girls, as I get to work once again with the wonderful, extremely talented Matt Richardson. Do take a second to go to the link in the description box below for his Reddit page, and there is an abundance of absolute creepy, spine-chilling, paranormal, cryptid, government cover-ups, all sorts of varieties of genres of stories. As ever, please do let me know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share and help build this channel and community. And don't forget the hashtag TeamFEAR. Without further ado, let's get into this brand new series entitled Navajo Glass. Let's get straight into that. My 6-month-old son, Ben, has developed a phobia towards mirrors, and it's really starting to freak me out. The behaviour in question began one late night a week or so ago. Nothing about that day seemed different than any other. We were just getting ready for bed. My wife, Emily, made an amazing dinner, but the majority of it ended up on Ben's face, and so I took the baby upstairs to get cleaned up. He gurgled happily in my arms as we dramatically bounded up the creaking wooden steps. Ben looked content as could be, with a belly full of broccoli and a diaper full of remnants, but the second we waltzed into the bathroom and passed in front of my wife's antique mirror, the kid took one look at his reflection and then screamed like the devil himself was on the other side. Now, you might think this is somewhat normal. Babies do strange stuff. I admit to that fact. I'm a new dad, but I can still attest there is no shortage of parents out there claiming that their child can see other things. Some of my stranger family members are included in that category. It's a natural reaction. Maybe it's the way they stare off into space. Maybe it's the way they giggle at nothing in particular. Babies can be spooky at times, and it's hard to know what they are thinking sometimes. But babies do not exhibit the exact same exorcistic behaviour towards mirrors for 5 nights in a row. There's nothing normal about that. Eventually, the problem became so bad that we couldn't sleep. Every mirror in the house terrified my son. We couldn't bathe him. We couldn't sleep in our room. We couldn't do any of the things that babies needed to do. The problem became more than we could manage, and so we took him to the emergency room one stress-induced night that weekend. We waited for 4 hours for the staff. The baby didn't complain, cry, or utter a peep the entire time. Sometime around 10, we were finally seen, and Ben looked happy as could be. The paediatrician on call made me test out my theory in person. So, just like at home, I carried the kid in front of their mirror, let him have his wicked little scream, and pulled him back. Once free of his reflection, the baby smiled happily. He looked at me and the doctor curiously, like he couldn't understand the ruckus, like nothing had happened at all. I can't explain it, I muttered sleepily to the staff. Outside the mirror, he's fine. He could do this 1,000 times and he'll only scream the moment he sees his reflection. It doesn't make any sense. It's exhausting. We were hoping you might know what to do next. A nurse in the room tutted and eyed Ben suspiciously. Any other health issues? She asked. No, my wife replied. Nothing. He doesn't cry when I leave the room. He doesn't wake up at all at night. He doesn't fight when I feed him. He's just a good baby. The doctor nodded. The nurse nodded. My wife nodded. Everybody nodded, but me. I think your son is fine. An albeit small wave of relief washed over me. Are you sure? I asked. Yes, he replied. Based on previous checkups, based on what you're telling me here, this could be a behavioural thing. Some babies are fearless. Some are scared of their own shadow. It does not mean anything immediately wrong with any of them. I would expect Ben to grow out of this by the time our next checkup. If not, come see us again. See? My wife scolded me. You have to stop worrying. I nodded. I told him that sounded fine. but I didn't stop worrying. I tested out my mirror theory every night since. On Monday, Ben screamed the moment we brought him in for a bath. Not much changed there. On Tuesday, I covered his eyes and he yelped out on the way out. Some progress. The kid was finally clean. On Wednesday, Emily wanted him to face the phobia, so we let him scream in front of the mirror for an hour. On Thursday, we put a sheet over all the mirrors. And miraculously, that worked. It wasn't a solution, more like a band-aid. Ben still screamed whenever the sheet slipped. He still found new mirrors and tiny little reflective surfaces that upset him. But we both welcomed the small piece of duct tape on the problem that had taken over our day-to-day lives. Friday passed by as normally as any other. We both worked from home. Emily played with Ben in the morning. I took over for the afternoon. My son loved to bounce around in a little jumper, which we recently bought at Target. I loved how long it kept him occupied. It was the type of contraption that kept him standing, with a bunch of different toys suspended over his head. Ben would swat at the tiny little monkey, or paw on the cartoonish bird for hours. Sometimes it would just jump in place. He squeaked and giggled along with the songs they played. The kid loved it. The jumper freed me up to finish my last report of the week. My boss was all over me that day, and my production had slipped along with my lack of sleep. I needed to finish the report in question on time, or there would be serious questions about my job. None of us needed that. Nonetheless, sometime around 3, a hideous shriek broke me free from the last few remaining cells on my spreadsheet. Jesus, what's wrong, buddy? Ben wailed horribly, worse than before. He swatted at his eyes as if they were the source of his pain. I rushed over, tried to pull him out, but the baby's tiny little feet kicked ferociously and fought me and the straps of the jumper equally. Easy, Ben, big Ben, easy, I whispered, trying not to alert my equally busy wife. Finally, I got him loose. Fresh lines of tears stained Ben's reddened face. A thin, red cut branded his chubby cheek. I looked down and noticed a small mirror tied to the far right of the toy lineup on the jumper. It looked like something that might mimic a car's rear view. I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't notice. Did that bad mirror scare you again? He nodded. The jumper went through its usual rotation of songs. I looked down for the power button, all the while trying to balance my son, and in the process of doing both, the mirror must have caught Ben's point of view for a second time. The poor kid started howling uncontrollably again. I kicked the jumper and rushed to quiet Ben as a familiar song from Sesame Street played over and over on the radio. Who's that baby looking in the mirror? That baby looks just like you. The baby's tiny little body shrieked so harshly that I felt his chest convulsing in my hands. I ripped the mirror off the jumper and pulled the batteries from the bottom, but the damn song kept playing. Who's that baby looking in the mirror? That baby looks just like you. My wife rushed into the room. She pulled Ben out of my arms and immediately calmed him down. I sprinted the still singing jumper out into my driveway and spiked it onto the street curb. I stomped the tiny little glass mirror into 1,000 pieces and collapsed next to it, defeated, deflated, and exhausted from the stress of the moment. I returned inside to a happy baby and confused wife. Friday night and Saturday morning passed without any incident. We kept the sheet over our bathroom and bedroom mirrors. We covered the shiny countertops and refrigerators and glass doors. We even took to moving curtains over the windows. We tried to close off any reflective surface we could find, but Ben kept finding the mirrors. We can't live like this, I insisted to my wife, but she swore she didn't mind. Emily thought the best approach would be to make him forget about the fear. Once it wasn't so present in his mind, maybe he would move on to other things. I didn't understand it. I didn't believe in it. Not really. But the strategy seemed better than all our other options. All the doctors and online sites claimed the only thing to fix this could be time. And so we decided to give it to him. Emily went out with her mother Saturday night, and I agreed to stay behind. Boys' night. The ladies left sometime around 7. Ben stayed up with me to watch the Knicks game. He ate his food, he drank his bottle, he pooped on schedule. He fell asleep sometime around 8, and I nearly joined him, but my work from earlier in the week beckoned like a bad habit. I carried my son into his room, put him in a crib, and moved our baby camera into position. I returned to the living room to get an early start on my spreadsheets. It was monotonous work, and my concentration quickly shifted from mirrors and doctors to formulas and cell formats. 8:30 turned into 9, and 9:30 into 10. The kid started screaming at 8:30 on the dot. This time, something screamed with him. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The scream sounded foreign, almost animalistic. I darted into the nursery like a bat out of hell, and I ignored the shadows. I ignored the mirrors. I focused on my son and my son alone. I scooped Ben up in my arms like a rescue worker and sprinted from the room like a headless chicken. We exited the room, through the kitchen, and towards the basement. We sprinted down the steps, and there was a spare bedroom down there, separate from the main room, and there were no windows. I rushed inside, locked the door behind us, and settled Ben safely into the sheets of our unused twin bed. I joined him a moment later, and looked down under the covers to make sure he was okay. And then, we waited. I felt a little foolish. Maybe I imagined the second scream, I told myself. Maybe it just caught me off guard. But I knew that couldn't be true. I heard it, as clear as day. I know I heard something. I looked under the covers. A pair of frightened bright blue eyes met mine. Ben gurgled and whimpered a bit. He didn't seem all that fazed. I did notice a second red rash just above his brow, and my heart dropped into my stomach. This one looked deeper than the first. We sat there for a full 15 minutes, waiting. I had no idea what to do next. I rationalised that if a real animal were in the house, maybe it would not be safe to go upstairs. But part of me knew that was a lie. Every noise made me jump. We have baseboard heating, a furnace, and actual ducts for air conditioning. The expanding and contracting of the ducts combined with the kicks of the baseboards make for a dramatic soundtrack. Every time I wanted to get up, a pipe would crack, and I would jump right back under the sheets with my son. Sometime around 10:30, however, I heard a sound that most certainly had nothing to do with the gas or electric. An object made of glass crashed above our heads. The shattered sound reverberated down from what must have been the second floor all the way down to the basement. A sound of suction followed it. It was like somebody had turned on a massive vacuum cleaner. The droning vibration of some unseen device whirred and spinned for several heart-clenching seconds, and then it stopped, just as suddenly as it had started. The suction was quickly replaced by heavy footsteps. I placed my hand over my son's mouth carefully so as not to alert whatever the fuck was upstairs of our position. But he cried anyway. I couldn't blame him. Part of me wanted to cry too. Ben let out one terrible, petrified wow that started in the bottom of his belly and worked its way up through his already aching lungs. His shout pierced through my fingertips like they weren't even there. The footsteps upstairs grew faster. It was like they were unsure before, but now had found what they were looking for. In seconds, the feet descended from the second floor into the kitchen. A moment later, the owner opened the first basement door. I stood up out of bed, foolishly, as if to protect my son one final time. I grabbed a bat left behind in the room. The footsteps descended down the basement stairs, and they paused at the bottom, as if listening. I waited for the intruder to approach the spare room. I levelled the bat against my shoulders and prepared myself to swing. My son cried from under the sheets, and I knew it had to be time. And then something very close by began to scream. The sound felt guttural. It emerged in a deep, earthy tone that quickly escalated in volume and pitch. The scream filled my ears like a bell and produced a pounding throb in my head that made me unsteady on my feet. I could smell its stinking breath. I still can to this day. I grabbed my son's head and held him close to me. He wowed horribly, and I wanted to cry too. I wanted to open the door and start swinging a bat at whatever I could find. Parental instincts flooded my veins like a drug. But just before anything further could happen, the garage door opened and all hell broke loose in an instant. The heavy feet retreated rapidly up the stairs. The suction sound came and went, and in an instant, The aches and groans of the house returned to normal. A few moments later, my wife came inside and asked if we were all right. I tried to compose myself. I tried to calm down. I told Emily a burglar got inside. I disguised the real truth from her, and even now, because I'm not sure how she'll react. I'm not sure how anyone will react. I investigated the house that night. Everything looked the same in the living room. A couple of chairs were pushed aside in the kitchen. My son's room was untouched, and so was our master room, and all of the valuables were in their place. Only one object in the entire house appeared amiss. Sitting on the bathroom floor, covered a plain white tile, sat the ruins of my wife's antique mirror. Someone ripped it right off the wall. Navajo Glass, Part 2. Let's get straight into that. Welcome to the Discount Inn. It was late. Too late to be doing this kind of thing. It was 10 o'clock to be exact, on a weeknight, and the checkout kid at the desk looked no older than 16. He read through his mantra about the rates and rules. He told me about the security deposit, and I handed over my license and credit card and said, "One room, please." My wife still didn't understand the reason for our little journey. I rushed her out the door the moment she'd got home from the store. Called that reaction sheer panic. I didn't tell her about the broken mirror. I didn't tell her about the screaming, or the animal, if it could be called that. She barely managed to pack a bag before I ushered her into the side door of my Jeep and peeled down the driveway. At that counter at the Discount Inn, I tried my best to explain. Something got into the house. I heard it. I took Ben and ran downstairs, but it followed us. Emily balanced her son on one hip and a pillowcase full of clothes in the other. What followed you? I don't know. How can you not know? I didn't see it. My wife eyed me suspiciously. 10 years of marriage built up a certain level of trust. I got her out of the house on that basis alone. She wasn't stupid. Getting her any further will require some real answers. I heard it scream, I added. The hotel clerk gasped. Emily just looked confused. Shouldn't we wait for the police? I didn't hear it leave. I think you scared it away. But I couldn't be sure. I couldn't take the chance. I looked towards Ben. Emily nodded. I think some part of her finally understood. And so we paid the kid, and we took the key, and we hustled our giggling baby towards the second row of rooms. It was raining that night, and I nearly slipped and fell on my face on the wet stairs. Enormous avalanches of white water leaked from the cracked gutters to pound the pavement in the rhythmic claps. Lightning danced across the trees dramatically, and thunder bellowed so angrily that even Ben looked a little bit worried. The wind blew so strong that I had to slam the door behind us just to get it shut. When we arrived inside the room, I collapsed on the bed and stared blankly at the fractured white paint on the ceiling. "Where did you get those mirrors?" I asked. My wife looked at me like I had 6 heads. "They were my grandmother's. You know that. I inherited them when she passed away." "Where did she get them?" I repeated. "Who cares?" "Stop fucking around, Emily. This is important," I shouted. I never yelled at my wife. I regretted it the moment the words left my lips. The confused look on her face was quickly exchanged for tears. She covered her face carefully and quickly exited to the bathroom. I followed in a mess of self-pity and stupidity. "Shit, I'm sorry, Bug. I didn't mean to yell," I complained to the closed door. "Really, I didn't. I'm just stressed. I think those mirrors are connected to this." She didn't answer. "Your Navajo grandma gave you the mirrors, right?" I asked carefully. "Before she died, before we met. I remember you told me that. But the Navajo didn't make glass, Em. None of the Native Americans did." "You think I want a fucking history lesson right now?" she sobbed. "No," I replied. "We're here, now. You got what you wanted. Just leave me alone." I listened to her. Better that than pushing my luck in an argument. I let Emily be and retreated to the safety of our assuredly bug-infested bed. I fed Ben the last few remaining drops of his bottle. I held him in my arms for a bit and flicked through the remnants of a syndicated comedy show on the shitty television. We almost fell asleep. 15 minutes later, my wife still hadn't emerged from the bathroom. Em? Are you okay in there? Silence. This is stupid, right? I shouldn't have yelled. I'm sorry. I love you. Can I please come in? More silence. Okay. No answer means I'm coming in. I opened the door slowly. Emily was standing in front of the mirror. Bug? She didn't even answer me. She didn't even move an inch. She just stared blankly at the picturesque mirror in front of the shower. I called for her again. I asked if she was okay, and when she didn't respond, I noticed her face in the reflection. Emily's mouth was wide open. Her eyes looked like she wanted to scream, but her mouth just couldn't get the sound out. I wanted to grab her. I wanted to get her the hell away from that mirror. But the shock of the moment deadened my reflexes. Before I could react, the door slammed in my face. I grabbed the handle and tried my best to pull it back open, and it was jammed. I can't explain it. One moment the handle worked perfectly, and the next it froze up like it was locked. I pounded on the frame. I even kicked at it a couple of times. I begged my wife to open up, but the door stayed shut. My son started to cry from the safety of his car seat. Something started to shake in the bathroom, and I could hear the sounds of clashing bodies and the struggle somewhere but a toilet. A bright white light poured underneath the frame. I stood back and watched in despair as all too familiar sounds of crashing of glass filled our small hotel room. A woman screamed, an animal screamed along with her. There was nothing I could do. I collapsed in a helpless, cowardly mess on the stained carpet of that crappy motel. Hell of a place to die, I thought. Hell of a place to lose your wife. But there was nothing I could do. The animalistic growls and the ripping and tearing of flesh from the other side of the door painted on an all too vivid picture of what might be happening inside. I kicked the frame. I begged a few more times. I pulled out my phone and tried to call 911, but just before my fingers tapped the final one in the emergency number, the bathroom door opened and my wife walked out in a clean white towel. I'm hungry. We should order pizza tonight, honey, she said. Wow, fantastic stuff there. I do enjoy a really good paranormal story. This one absolutely looks like it's building up to be a 5-star. As usual with Matt Richardson though, we don't expect anything less. As I said before, do take time to check out his Reddit in the link in the description box below. So many stories on there, just wonderful, enchanting. Lose yourself for a few hours. And don't forget to put the like and votes up there on comments and encourage him to do more great work. And if that's got you as gripped as I am already, tune in tomorrow for part 3 and part 4. As ever guys, please do let me know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share, it really does help build this channel and community. We are smashing our way through to the 10k subscriber mark by April. Can't do it without those likes and shares, and of course your comments. I'll be getting back to those later on tonight, and I hope you're all happy and well and enjoying your weekend. Above all, please remember, be safe, not sorry.